This is a clip from our Travel Portugal episode that explains all about Portuguese and indigenous grapes. Here we go.
Indigenous grapes. What are they? Sometimes called native or autochthonous grapes, these are grapes that are native to the country they reside in. Most of the grapes that we all know are the opposite of indigenous grapes. They're what we call international grapes. Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. Grapes have been planted all across the world, taken from country to country, and put in the region that best suits their climate. We all hope anyway. Compare that to indigenous grapes that, like your buddy from high school living in his parents' basement, never left their hometown. Indigenous grapes may have less cachet, are less well known, and have less marketability than their international counterparts, but they're often better suited for the terroir they grow in. There's no better example of this than Portugal, because while some countries may have kept their indigenous grapes, they have often allowed international grapes to creep on in. Italy's a great example. They may lean on Sangiovese and Nebbiolo, which are native, but you can definitely find Chardonnay or Cabernet in Italy in pretty high quantities. Not so much in Portugal. My rule is if I don't recognize the grape variety on a Portuguese label, that's a good thing. Portugal has over 250 indigenous grapes planted and really have fought against international grapes barging their way in. Their relative isolation, with Spain blocking one side and the ocean blocking the other, also helps. This cuts them off from the rest of Europe. And until the end of the Salazar regime in the 70s, international grapes weren't even allowed in anyway. So while everyone else was planting French grapes, Portugal was just doing its own thing. Plus, most of the wine was drunk within its borders, so the Portuguese had no one to please but themselves. And in 2021, this adherence to native grapes is finally starting to pay dividends. Consumers are looking for more authenticity and less ubiquitous wines. These grapes are more hardy against climate change. And the reds in particular are exactly what a lot of American palates love: fruit-forward and full-bodied. So what are these indigenous grapes of Portugal? Well, for whites, they're things like Syria, Arinto, Bernal Paris, and Alvarinho. For reds, Tinta Roriz, Touriga Franca, Castillao, Baga, and Trincadeira. But there is one grape that has a slightly larger reputation than the rest: Touriga Nacional. It's used both for still wines and as one of the primary grapes of port. It stands up well to the heat that's prevalent in much of this country. And this is Portugal's answer to Cabernet Sauvignon. It's big in body, fruit, tannin, acid, and alcohol. This bold grape has flavors like violets, plums, menthol, chocolate, licorice, blueberries, and slate. It can also stand up both to oak and time in the bottle, which means these wines can be age-worthy. So do you need to know the character and profiles of all these indigenous Portuguese grapes? Absolutely not. I certainly don't. Anyway, the reality is that almost every Portuguese wine is a blend, not a single grape. So you're much better off learning Portuguese wines based on place, which coincidentally is how they label their wines, and not worrying too much about the grapes involved. Unless, of course, you're the one who always had their hand raised in math class, and then by all means, try and learn all 250 grapes. But for us average folk, we'll be sticking to associating these wines with the place they come from. If all else fails, just start drinking them. These wines are so underpriced compared to other wines in their category that it's easy to experiment with a whole bunch.
If you want to know more about Portuguese wine, make sure to check out our full Travel Portugal episode, and don't forget to subscribe.